You might think your invention is what your startup should patent, but for a startup, what you invented is the last thing you should base your patent strategy on. I know that may sound like an unusual framing coming from a patent expert, because the default thinking is, we built something new, let's protect it. But startups don't win because of what they built. They win because of what the market adopts. So if your patent strategy is anchored to your invention, there's a real risk you're protecting the wrong thing. I'm Jackie Hutter, a globally recognized award-winning patent strategy expert, and let me show you how your startup can actually win with patents. Let's start with something that might sound surprising coming from a patent expert. I don't care about what you invented. Full stop. What I care about is whether anyone wants to buy what your tech or product enables. And if there are customers, you'd better be able to show me how you are going to generate scalable revenue from them. This is counterintuitive to most of you, I'm sure, because the vast majority of patents often start with the wrong question. The first question is usually, what did you invent? So founders explain the algorithm, the system, the model, the device, whatever they think the technical breakthrough is. And then the patent application gets built around that invention. But here's the problem. If the thing that patent covers is something no one actually wants to buy, the patent is worthless. It doesn't matter if the patent is high quality or low quality. It doesn't matter if the claims are broad or narrow. It doesn't matter if you spent $5,000 or $200,000 getting it. If there are no customers for what your patent claims cover, the economic value of that patent is exactly the same. Zero. Because patents don't create scalable revenue. Customers do. And until customers show you what they actually value, that is, what they're willing to pay for at scale, you don't really know where the value in your startup's tech or products lives. Which is why invention-first patent strategy can be particularly dangerous for startups. Incumbents, that is, established companies, play a very different game than startups. They're not trying to discover what customers want. They already know. They have products in the market. They have customers buying those products. They have revenue coming in every quarter. So when an incumbent files a patent application, they're usually protecting something that's already proven to matter. They're protecting the tech or products that support the business they already have, the products they know customers will pay for, the workflows that are extensions of what customers are already using, new systems that have developed as improvements from existing product offerings. In other words, incumbents patent subject matter that is a natural evolution of their present business models. They're not guessing about what might be valuable in the future. The market has already told them. Customers have already voted with their wallets. So when they file patent applications, they're looking to protect concepts that have already been validated as being associated with real business models. Certainly, their patents will cover tech or products that are novel and unobvious. But what they have developed and seek to patent will be largely directed towards solving the needs of customers with which the company is already well acquainted. In other words, they have a solid idea and often an almost perfect understanding of not only what tech or products their customers will buy, but also how their competitors will respond to an introduction of a new product. This means that incumbents that are filing patent applications are much more likely to file something that will hit the mark of what they need to protect. And that's an important difference. Because startups often try to use the same playbook as established companies, even though they're playing a completely different patent game. Unfortunately, startup founders typically mirror the patent strategy of incumbents without realizing they're playing a completely different game. Again, incumbents are working to protect proven value. They know what customers will pay for. They know which products matter. They know exactly where their revenue comes from. Startups don't have that. They're still figuring it out. The tech or product is evolving. The company's positioning in the market is often the result of one or more pivots because the customers are teaching management what actually matters. And that means something important. Startups don't actually know yet which part of their tech or product will drive value at scale. But when they sit down with a patent attorney, they are still being asked the same question. What did you invent? So they describe the current version of their tech or product to their patent attorney, who then files a patent application around it. And the startup's management returns to their task, finding a product market fit that, when identified, often looks nothing like what was covered by the patent application filed months or even years earlier. The risk is that a startup achieves solid market validation, but the founders missed out on protecting what customers were actually willing to buy at scale. This can leave the startup open to other companies, which are often much better funded incumbents, to leverage the knowledge that customers are willing to buy validated tech or products to introduce competing offerings. And if a startup's patent filings fail to cover the tech or products that customers will buy at scale, competitors can then freely introduce substitute tech or products without compensating the startup founders who actually created the innovation in the first place. This may not seem fair, but fair is not the issue. It's how business works. Think about it. If something is not protected, it's not stealing for someone else to walk away with it and use it for their own purposes without paying for it. So if you lock your patent strategy too early before the market shows you where the value is, you may end up protecting something that doesn't matter. Even worse, you may end up with a successful tech or product introduction that other companies can freely use, leaving your startup open to, at best, price erosion, or at worst, an inability to compete with later comers that have invested less to enter the market. In either case, the startup may find itself failing even though it was the company that changed things for the consumer. And that's the fundamental mismatch with patent strategy objectives. Incumbents protect what's already valuable. Startups are still trying to discover it. This is where startup patenting starts to get uncomfortable, because what you're really trying to do is hit a moving business target. Your product is going to change. Your customer is going to change. Even your use case might change. And yet, you're being asked to define in legal terms what is important enough to protect for the next 20 years. That's a bold move, because most startups don't make money from version 1 of their product. They make money from version 3 or 5 or 10. Let me give you an example. Think about a company that starts with an AI tool for radiologists. Maybe it highlights anomalies in scans. That's the invention. That's what gets patented. But a year later, they realize hospitals don't just want detection. They want workflow integration, they want reporting, they want decision support. So the company pivots. Now they're not just selling detection, they're selling a system that fits into clinical workflows. Then another shift happens. They realize the real value isn't even in the hospital. It's in the data. Now they're building longitudinal data sets, risk scoring models, maybe even partnering with pharma. That's where the revenue starts to scale. Now step back. The patent they filed early on, it was built around detection. But the business that actually scales, it's built around integration, data, and decision systems. So here's the uncomfortable truth. Startups don't just build products. They evolve into businesses. And patenting too narrowly around the first version of that business is like placing a bet before you know what game you're actually playing. You're aiming today at what your business will become tomorrow. And most founders underestimate how much that target is going to move. What I'm really encouraging founders to do is shift how they think about what they're protecting in their patent filings, even before they have established a solid product market fit. Instead of starting with, what did we build? Start with, if we're right, what does this make possible? Because that's actually the bet you're making as a startup. You're not betting that version 1 of your product is perfect. You're betting that your underlying approach, your tech or product, unlocks something meaningful in the market. So ask yourself, if this works, what changes? What becomes easier? What becomes scalable? What becomes inevitable? Because if you're right, the value is not going to look like your current product. It's going to show up in what your product enables. And that's important because your current product is temporary. It's the first expression of an idea. But your revenue, your real revenue, will likely come from a later version, a refined version, a repositioned version, maybe even a completely different version. So if you anchor your patent strategy to what you built today, you're anchoring it to something that's designed to change. Instead, anchor it to the outcome of the bet you're making, not the product, not the feature set, but what becomes possible if you're right, because that's the part that actually scales. Now, here's a very simple way to make this practical. Use the pivot test, because most startups pivot. Sometimes once, sometimes multiple times. And every time you pivot, things disappear. Features disappear, interfaces disappear, entire products disappear, but not everything disappears. There are always a few things that survive. The underlying capabilities, the things that still create value even as the business changes direction. So here's the test. If you pivot your company, does this still matter? If the answer is no, if it disappears when you pivot, that's a signal. It was tied to a specific version of your product, not to the long-term value of your business. But if it survives, if it becomes more important after the pivot, that's where you should be focusing your protection, because that's not just part of your product. That's part of your foundation. That's the thing your future revenue will depend on. So instead of asking, is this innovative? Or even, is this patentable? Ask, does this survive the pivot? Because if it does, it's probably worth protecting. And if it doesn't, it probably wasn't core to your business in the first place. This is where a lot of founders get tripped up, and it's not obvious. Most patent attorneys are not trained to address the patent needs of startups. Patent attorneys are not doing anything wrong when they start the patent process by asking you to describe your invention. They're doing exactly what they've been trained to do. But what they've been trained to do is built around a very different type of company. The system assumes that by the time something reaches a patent attorney, it's already been vetted. It's already tied to a product. It's already tied to customers. It's already tied to revenue. In other words, it assumes the client already knows what matters. Of course, this assumption is likely true for incumbent companies. If you're an established company of any size, you know exactly which parts of your tech or product drive value for your customers, because you not only have been selling them products that meet their needs, often for many years, you have a relationship with them that enables you to understand what unmet needs they have currently. This means that you are more likely to hit the mark on developing new tech or products that will satisfy them before you deliver a new solution to your customers. In this lower risk business environment, the patent attorney's job is straightforward. Define the features of the tech or product that your marketing people have identified as meeting your customers' needs and file it in a patent application. Because you know what the customer needs and have designed your tech or product to meet these requirements, a good patent attorney can write strong claims that have a solid possibility of broadly covering what you are delivering. More importantly, you can educate your patent attorney to address what competitive products might look like, because you not only know your customers, you also can anticipate how your competitors will respond. This makes it more likely that your patent's claims can also prevent others from introducing non-infringing substitutes. But startups don't work this way. Research and development exists in a much higher risk environment. You don't have customers. Heck, you may not even know if there will be any customers for the tech or products that you are developing. And yet, the typical patenting process treats you like you already know. So there's a mismatch. The status quo patenting approach assumes that there is certainty in what is being put in a patent application, even when most startup founders exist in an environment devoid of any certainty. So once you see that mismatch, something important becomes clear. You cannot outsource patent strategy. You can outsource the legal work. You can outsource the drafting. You can outsource the filing, but you cannot outsource the thinking, because your attorney will work with whatever you bring them. If you bring them your current product, they will do a great job protecting your current product. If you bring them your current implementation, they will do a great job protecting that implementation, but they are not inside your business. They're not watching your pivots. They're not talking to your customers. They're not seeing how your understanding of the market is changing week to week. That's your job. So if you bring the wrong focus, even to a great patent attorney, you don't get a bad patent. You get a very good patent on the wrong thing. And that's the real risk, because a great patent on the wrong thing doesn't help you. It just gives you confidence in the wrong strategy. So the shift is this: before you ever talk to a patent attorney, you need to decide what is actually worth protecting, not based on what you built, but based on where your business is going. Because that judgment, not the legal drafting, is what determines whether your patent strategy actually works. So if you can't outsource patent strategy, the next question becomes, who should you actually work with? Because not all patent attorneys think the same way, and the difference shows up very quickly in the questions they ask. A traditional approach sounds like this: what did you invent? Walk me through the system. Let's document the implementation. And again, that's not wrong, but it's incomplete for a startup. What you're really looking for is someone who shifts the conversation, someone who asks, where is this going? How does this become a business? What part of this will matter if you're successful? Because those questions are about value, not just invention. As a startup founder, you need to find a patent attorney who is willing to engage with your business, who understands that your first product is likely not your final product, who helps you think through what's actually worth protecting, not just how to describe it. And this doesn't mean they need to run your strategy. That's still your job, but they should be able to meet you at that level. So a simple filter is this. If the conversation stays entirely focused on what you built, they're addressing the wrong problem, which means that your patent filings will likely be based on the wrong patent strategy. In short, for startups, the goal isn't just to document the invention, it's to position the company for where it's going. So let's bring this all together. We started with a simple idea. An invention by itself is not a winning patent strategy because inventions don't create value. Customers do. And that's where startups and incumbents fundamentally diverge. Incumbents know what customers already pay for, so they can safely patent the present. But startups don't have that luxury. You're still discovering where the value is. You're still figuring out what customers actually want. And at the same time, you're being asked to make long-term decisions about what to protect. That's the tension. So what you have to do is this. Stop anchoring your patent strategy to what you already built. Start anchoring it to what your success will create in the future, what your technology enables, what your market will depend on if you're right, because your product will change. Your business model may change. Your customer might even change. But if you've thought clearly about what survives those changes, what becomes more important as you scale, that's where real protection lives. And that's also where real leverage comes from. So as you think about patents going forward, just keep one filter in mind. Am I protecting what I built, or am I protecting what my startup makes inevitable? Because the companies that get that right don't just protect their ideas. They position themselves inside the future they're helping create. I'll leave you with this. Winning with patents isn't about protecting what your startup has built as of the date your patent application is filed. It's about positioning your startup's patents around what your tech or product will make possible if you place the right business bets. Because the tech or product you put in front of your customers must change until they show you that you have achieved product market fit. But if you've thought clearly about what drives the value that resides in your startup's core capabilities, and how those capabilities are likely to survive 1, 2, or even more pivots in your startup's journey, that's where real patent leverage exists. And if done correctly, you can make an early patent filing relevant to your startup long into the future. That's how you win with patents, not by protecting the past, but by owning your startup's place in the future. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe for more tips and tools to help your startup obtain patents that move the needle on creating real business value.